G'day, g'day. I am Sinner, and I have finished another book, which means another book review. This time, it's The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And to be honest, this book is really overhyped. You know, especially if you spend a lot of time on the internet, you'll come across so many people who talk it up as if it's this, book that once you read it, you'll just be like a master manipulator. They'll be like, "Oh my god, did you know it was like banned in prisons? Oh yeah, it's such a dark book. Oh my gosh." You know, I think it's funny with this book on the internet because it's done rounds, right? It started off as like a book that um entrepreneur type people. Well, it was like Sigma type people first, like the Andrew Tate type folk. Then it was entrepreneur type people who were all getting up in arms about this book. And then recently, I've seen all these memes about quote unquote dark psychology, and it's like somehow anime nerds have happened upon this book and they've treated it as if it makes them a character from an anime, Ayana Koji from High School of the Elite or something like that. Good anime. I watched the first season. I don't like the fan service in it, but that's that's a different topic. Anyway, this book overall very overhyped, but still very good. Um, it has a lot of things that I think in day-to-day life you don't really think about. And some of it, when you read it, it seems like common sense, but when you think about it, unless you've actually trained yourself to act in particular ways and you have a strong social, what do they call it? EQ and emotional IQ, you wouldn't really think about it, you know? Um, yeah. And it's like a lot of these things, it's not so much about power as it is politics. All the laws are about, and I mean, power in a way is just politics. It's about maintaining a support base, right? A having enough people to prop you up. That's really what power is. So that makes sense. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It mainly covers not only laws and talks about different ideas, but also it gives a lot of historic um, anecdotes to really back up the claims. And usually it's either your your tricks that are made up by con artists in order to outsmart people. Like there's one about uh, being coming across as generous, right? As a trick, um, or to stand out as someone generous. And he gives this anecdote about this guy who borrows money from Al Capone and yeah, use selective generosity, I think is the one. But he talks about this story about this guy called Al, Al Capone, the famous crime master, and this con man gets like $50,000 from Al Capone, and he's like, "I've got this big business idea. I need 50 grand in order to do it. Um, can you give me the money?" And Al Capone sort of already clocked that the guy's maybe a bit of a con artist, but he lends the money anyway, right? And then the con artist keeps the money in a safe until his time's up, and then he comes back to Al Capone and he's like, "Oh, I was unable to make the money that I thought I was going to." And Al Capone in his history, it's either he loans money and he gets a lot back, or he gets none of it back and like kneecaps the guy or kills him, right? But this conman, he returns the money in full, right? And because that was that generosity, he wasn't being tricked, he wasn't being robbed of his money, was so out of the ordinary for Al Capone, he actually gifted him like 5K for free as like a gesture of goodwill. And it turns out that the conman was just after the 5K the whole time. And it's like, and it's a really cool story. And there's a lot that are like that. Um, but yeah, it's quite interesting. And yeah, overall, the book, it has some that are sort of kind of a bit repetitive. Like, there's only so many ways you can say maintain a good reputation. Um, try and use other people when you can, and deceive the enemy. Which is basically what most of them are. They're different flavors of those three. And make yourself look good. That's the other fourth one. But yeah, overall, pretty good book. I don't think, some people say like, what would you say? Some people will say like, oh, I don't plan on manipulating people, but I read the book because I want to make sure people aren't manipulating me. And here's what I'd tell you. No one is going to actually use any of the 48 laws of power to manipulate you. But what you will see is politicians using the 48 laws of power. I'm not saying they're reading the book and applying them, but I'm saying they're using tactics that are in this book um, to gain power. And I can think of two contemporary examples. One of the laws, which is pretty early on, I'm pretty sure it's even law two. No, it's not law two. Either way, one of the laws is to basically take credit for other people's efforts. And it's true, right? And when I read about it, he talked about Nikola Tesla and um, the the guy who Edison, I think it is, who took credit for all of Tesla's inventions and made a bunch of money off of selling the patents and all that sort of thing. And yeah, when I thought of that, I immediately thought of Elon Musk, right? And Elon Musk, he's a savvy businessman. He knows what he's doing, right? I mean, clearly he knows something about power because of the way he managed to go from being like a long-time Democrat, becomes Republican, immediately becomes basically the right-hand man to Trump. I mean, that was pretty intense, right? One of the things is like he obviously didn't invent the rockets that are used in SpaceX, nor did he invent the Tesla Model X or any of these sorts of things. But because he's the CEO of the company, he can take credit for these inventions. And then that allows him to bolster his reputation because even some people will be like, yeah, well, some people will obviously point out, well, he didn't invent these things. He just paid people to invent them. And he's just a businessman. He's not like a scientific genius. But I mean, how many people do you know? I don't know a lot actually, but there are a lot of people out there who laud Elon as like a scientific genius, right? And you could basically do this for any of these, right? There was one, I forget where it is, but another one of the laws, keep others in, law 17, keep others in suspense, cultivate an air of unpredictability. Who do you think of when I read that law? I immediately thought of Donald Trump, right? Maybe I'm thinking of these guys because they're in power at the moment, but who knows? Donald Trump, he is probably one of the most unpredictable politicians ever, right? Like in my memory, at least, as a young Gen Z man, Donald Trump is so unpredictable. Like all these crazy ideas. Hey, let's buy Greenland. We're renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Hey, we're going to turn Gaza into a resort, right? And sometimes you might think like, why is he doing all this? Well, there's two aspects to it. If you go by 48 laws of power, one, any attention is good attention, which is in here. I forget which law it is, but one of the things that is sort of an underlying principle throughout the book is that keeping people's attention is a good idea, right? And with Trump, you know, obviously he has to do that to maintain popularity as a politician. You can't be popular if no one cares about you. That means that you're just an apathetic nobody. And then you won't be able to maintain a reputation because there's nothing to maintain. A bad reputation you can turn into a good one. But if you have zero reputation, then there's nothing there, right? So I think a lot of these big plans and big ideas that he just randomly throws out there are really ways to just keep himself in the spotlight or keep himself as, what would you say, as a topic of conversation, right? And then, and you know, when you look at the way politics has gone since 2016 with Trump, I mean, everyone either loves Trump or hates Trump, or most people at least. A lot of people nowadays aren't really, you know, how do I put it? They're not really in that middle ground, right? And I think part of that is because of how good of a job politicians do at grabbing people's attention using tricks like this, right? Um, yeah, it's quite interesting. It's very, very interesting. I'll see if there's any other laws in here that I wouldn't mind talking about. Otherwise, I probably will end it. Yeah, play to people's fantasies. That's a good one. And Trump does that too, right? He plays to people's fantasies. That's Law 31. I mean, that's the whole Make America Greater thing. America as an economy was great before the global financial crisis. It was growing up. There was a bubble that no one knew about. Quality of life was going up. And ever since then, there's basically been faux growth and stagnation, right? So Trump can come in knowing the times, and that's another one of the laws, like be a product of your time, basically, and use the zeitgeist at that time to elevate himself up in power by playing on the fantasy of turning America into the global ultra superpower that it once was, which, by the way, I don't think it's ever going to be again. I think we're moving into a multipolar world, and the days of a world spanning American hegemon is just over. But yeah, I think that's all I'd really want to talk about. Yeah, overall, it's actually a very interesting book. I would highly suggest it. It's very fun. It's not too difficult to read, um, or even just to listen to. I listened to a audiobook version of it, and that was pretty good. It was spoken by Robert Greene. It's free on YouTube. Yeah, overall, would recommend. It's overhyped. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening.